the work and cannot be here today. And again, would you please look left and right at those empty sections and think of the people who would love to be sitting where you are and are not because they don't have the financial possibility to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our final panel. We're fortunate to have Reverend James Lawson, a pioneer of nonviolence in the American civil liberties movement. From his crucial work in the 1950s till today, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called him the leading theorist and strategist of nonviolence in the world. Mohammed Lamin Saidiakam is the coordinator of Africans Rising for Justice, one of the most influential young justice leaders in the continent of Africa. It's a continent-wide grassroots movement of the people of Africa and diaspora rising up for the voice of justice. And finally, Kasha Nabagesera, the founding mother of the LGBT movement in Uganda. Ms. Nabagesera founded, please. Ms. Nabagesera founded the Freedom and Rome Uganda Civil Society Group, where she was executive director for 10 years. Each of you has been or is involved with amazing work. And this time, if you're willing, I want you to tell the story of what you've done and why it's driven you in the way that it has. Reverend Lawson, what is that work and that drive that's worked through your lifetime?
I'm not sure I know exactly what to say.
You're so humble.
But number one, I've committed myself to the transformation of my own country because I'm convinced that my own nation, my own government, with the insidious unity of the so-called free market economy, is the number one enemy of truth and justice in the world today. And I am convinced that Canada and Europe, by their consent to my government's foolishness and avarice, have betrayed the human race in still yet another fashion. So my work across the years has been to organize the black community in the United States, and we did through nonviolent struggle, through what I call the Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King movement, not
Amen.
the civil rights movement.
Amen.
But through the Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King movement, we did begin the attack upon segregation, Jim Crow law, and racism, and became the first set of people in the United States in the 20th century to say no to the advancement of the United States as a white Christian country.
Amen. Amen. Okay.
No to USA military bases around the world. No to violence and war. So I maintain that in spite of all the good that the Parliament and many of us are doing around the world, unless we recognize the diagnosis that the world empire through my own land must be challenged so that the shackles can be removed from people around the world, and the human race therefore has the possibility of a burst of freedom and justice in place of the old system of plantation capitalism and the like.
Amen. Lamin.
I was born in a country, one of the smallest countries in Africa, that have been ruled by the world's most brutal dictator. And I did not understand what people call the word democracy. So I keep, trying to understand. When I was exposed outside the country that I was born, I realized that people are enjoying to speak their minds and their hearts about issues that they felt are not working right for them. From those trainings and exposure that I had, I came back to organize with the young people in my country for 7 good years of organizing. When the moment came in 2016, we were able to mobilize ourselves and kick out the world's most brutal dictator, Jammeh, who have been, butchering any kind of human humiliation that you might think of. The dictator have been putting on the Gambians. But when we work together, through organizing ourselves, taking the streets, taking the social media, we are able to convince the population that it is time for us to work together and kick out the world's most brutal dictator.
Amen.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Tasha.
Thank you. It's always difficult to talk after very strong, powerful voices like this, but I'll give it a try. For me, it's very simple what drives me to do what I do every day. It's anger. I got tired of always feeling sorry for myself and for my community. And the second is faith, because I know what I'm fighting or what I'm going through with my community. We are not the first to go through it. And as Dr. Lawson has said, it has the civil rights movement or the Rosa Parks MLK movement has started from somewhere. What we are doing today is not extraordinary. We've seen social justice movements throughout history. We've seen the apartheid era throughout history. We've seen indigenous people starting to rise up. So for me, that kind of faith gives me hope to wake up every day and do what I do, because I know one day it will change. And I always keep telling people that I may not even live to see what I'm fighting or to celebrate it, but the mere fact that I can stand up and do something today instead of feeling sorry for myself keeps me going every day. So for me, just the faith and the anger that tells me, don't just feel sorry for you, keeps me going.
Amen.
Anger.
Starting with Kasha, I'm not sure the delegates realize the kind of global influence each one of you has had. I'm going to ask you to take one thing that you're proud of in the action you've taken, just one element, and tell them how an individual person like you can have the kind of influence you had. Just you could tell us one story or one bit that you're really proud of.
Yeah, for me, it has been the visibility that we've created. Because when I started the LGBT movement, I was in shock. I didn't know what was happening around me, because finding out that I was illegal and I could spend the rest of my life in jail was a shocker. So I didn't know where to start from, and internet was new and very expensive. So I decided to starve myself to just go into internet cafes and do research about issues of homosexuality in Uganda. And that's when I found out it was not only Uganda, but Africa and the world over. So for me, that shock drove me to do a lot of research to find out that actually there are LGBT movements around the world. And so for me, that has been a very big achievement for our movement, to be able to connect with the movement around the world, to share resources, to share knowledge, to share information. And even when they were trying to recriminalize, because currently our law is life imprisonment if you're caught in the act. But about 8-10 years ago, the government also started to propose the death penalty. And because we had really built a very strong network around the whole world, people stood up from every corner and said, Uganda, we are watching you. You cannot do this. And for me, that was very powerful. It showed that the world is watching what is happening in Uganda. It showed that we are not alone in our struggle for equality and freedoms. And it showed that actually we have friends who are there thinking about us every day. And for me, I feel that that has been a very strong achievement for our movement, to know that we are not walking alone.
Lamine, what would you choose?
For me, the new paradigm shift in Africa, contributing to that paradigm shift. Africa is known to change leaders through coup d'etats. But now the new paradigm shifts have been when people realize that they need to take the mantle of leadership in their own hands and change their status quo. And then being in the front line of taking that new paradigm shift is a critical and turning moment for me and the lives of young people that I work with across the continent. We have seen in my country young people organizing themselves, women organizing themselves to take the streets and then kick out dictators. We have seen in other countries that we work with, young people in Burkina Faso, through movements called Ballet Citoyen, taking the streets of Burkina Faso and kicking out another world most brutal dictator. As well, seeing young people organizing themselves, saying no to Abdoulaye Wade when he wanted to extend his term in office. We've seen the continuous organizing of the movement that we work with and across the continent of Africa, that young people are getting more organized and getting more confident that it is time for us to make our countries better. Nobody will come from anywhere to do that for us. Amen. So that gives me courage that I think that the world can be better with the young people in leadership.
Thank you, Lamine. Thank you. Thank you. Reverend, really briefly, almost out of time.
As a child, I discovered that Jesus is a nonviolent athlete, using love as power to do justice, and to love mercy, and to do works of faithful caring for other human beings.
Amen.
I began to read Gandhi in 1947 as a freshman in college and recognized that what I was trying to do, Gandhi had experimented with by that time for 50 years, and is the father of the term nonviolence. Nonviolence as love and compassion was his translation of ahimsa from Jainism. And then I moved south at the urgings of Martin Luther King Jr. and traveled all around the southeastern section of the country in the trouble spots where people were seeking to break the shackles of racism and help them to understand the scriptures and Jesus from a nonviolent perspective, and then organized many of the campaigns. For 20 years, we had a nonviolent campaign, which I will say again, I call the Martin Luther King Jr. Rosa Parks campaign.
Right, thanks.
And I see that nonviolence campaign as one of the most effective ones yet. But I know that today, in my own country, we must have campaigns in the 21st century that will make the campaigns of the 20th century seem pale
Amen.
in comparison if we're going to get a world we want.
This one's impossible, so start with Amin, and then Reverend Lawson. I want you to tell them, as people who've had an ability to change the world, what would you say to them in 30 seconds, what you want them to do to make the greatest impact that they can? Inspire, exhort. Go ahead, Lamine, and then Reverend Lawson, and Kashi, you get the last word.
We need to educate the masses to be aware and be conscious of their rights. When the masses are aware and conscious of their rights, especially those at the grassroots level, they will take issues in their hands and they will deliver dignity for themselves.
Yes. Reverend Lawson.
Gandhi called nonviolent power the force of the universe, the greatest force possible. You are doing many good works. If you would also discover that you must join your power to the power of the people, and through major campaigns of struggle together, we can and will break the bondage of sexism and racism and violence and plantation capitalism in our world.
Amen. Amen.
You can only change something you're aware of. So spread the word. get informed about what is happening around you, around the world. That is the only way you will be able to impact any change or any action, because I'm not going to know what is behind this curtain if I'm not informed about it. So go out, look for what is happening around you, around the world, get informed, and then you'll be in better position to act. Do not do harm, do good.
Ladies and gentlemen, 3 examples.
Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh. Hi everyone, my name is Valarie, Kaur of the Revolutionary Love Project. I am so excited to share this moment with you all today. I want to share with you a tradition in my faith, in the Sikh faith. Our ancestors were trained as Sant Sipahi, warrior saints. They were warriors who fought the good fight, who fought against injustice, but they did it in a way that was grounded in the ethic of love. And so we were told that they would go into battle with a sword in their hand, but their shield was a musical instrument that they would carry on their backs. And in the morning, they would play this musical instrument. On the morning of a bloody battle, they would play this musical instrument to ground themselves in love, to be able to go out into the battlefield and fight for truth and justice. The first woman warrior, her name was Mai Fago. And her story, in the year 1705, there was a great battle raging, and there were 40 soldiers who abandoned their post and returned to their village. And this village woman turned to them and said, "You will not abandon your post. You will return to the fire, and I will lead you." She mounted a horse, she donned a turban, and with a sword in her hand and a dilruba, a musical instrument, on her back, the story goes, she led them where no one else would. She became the one she was waiting for. I share that story because I am not just the woman warrior, I am the deserter too. There are moments when the battle for justice is so long and so hard and so painful that a voice in me says, I can't. In those moments, I call upon the wise woman in me to take my hand and to turn me back toward the fire and to lead me back to my post. And so as you all contemplate how you might turn your passion for social justice into action, I want to leave you with these 3 questions from my tradition. First, what is your sword? Is it your voice? Is it your pen? Is it your artist brush? Is it your scalpel? Is it your paycheck? What is the way that you know that you can wield power in the world to fight the good fight? How will you train with that sword? Who will you train with? And remember, there will be moments where you will be tempted to lay that sword down in the service of a paycheck or the allure of comfort, or when the battle grows too difficult. And so my second question is, what is your shield? What is the practice that you will carry on your back? Is it yoga? Is it meditation? Is it music? Is it prayer? Is it poetry? What is that practice that you can practice every day to remind you why you are fighting the good fight, to help you breathe in the midst of the battle? This, I thought, was appropriate for me to pick up after the 2016 election. I started learning, I'm not musical, I started learning this instrument. This is an actual dilruba, one of the original instruments that were used in my faith in religious practice and sacred worship. And so I literally will carry this on my back when I get on the airplane to go to the next march or protest. I will try to sound this instrument to remind me why I'm doing what I'm doing, to help me become the warrior who leads the deserter back into the flames. Last question for you. There will be moments when you say, I can't. I can't lead this protest. I can't treat this patient. I can't organize this congregation. I can't. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not enough. I know that voice. I call that voice the little critic. In those moments, please remember, we do not go into battle alone. We do not give birth alone. We do not go into battle alone. We need one another. We need to be soldiering with one another, and we need to be breathing and playing our instruments with one another. And so my last question to you is, whose hand will you reach for? Who is the one who would tell you that you are brave enough to face this fire and to fight this fight? So with those 3 things, your sword, your shield, and the hand of someone you love, you already have all you need to pursue a life devoted to social justice. Thank you. Vaiguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaiguru Ji Ki Fateh.